The Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Welcome to the SpotTrack.com podcast. Kevin Sylvester, Paul Peck from BuffaloSportsPage.com, and Mike Giannetti, the founder of SpotTrack.com. We're going to talk baseball and one specific contract in baseball and how it's going to affect other contracts, future contracts.
Mike will tell you it's the specific contract in baseball.
I mean, it might get fishy here.
Oh,
sorry. I just
3, 2,
you
1.
you casted a line for a really attempt at a bad joke there.
What did you tell you? It was sitting on the tee right there, Paul, and I figured I'd beat you to the punch.
We're gonna fillet you after that one.
I'll let you finish this, Paul. Mike Trout's contract and how it's going to relate to Bryce Harper's future contract and Manny Machado.
Now, start, Mike, obviously, by saying Mike Trout is probably the best overall player in baseball right now. I argue with me if you want to, but I think he's the guy. He's the LeBron of baseball. He's the Tom Brady, the Aaron Rodgers of, he's the guy. So when we talk about his contract, you're talking about the dominant player in the league.
And he's the best Trout to ever play baseball, with all apologies to Steve.
Okay.
Thank
Are you done yet?
No, I just
okay.
I wanted to throw that in there.
All right, that's a heck of an introduction. I started this little piece I wrote on Mike Trout. The intentions were to break down his contract and nothing more. And then it got really interesting really fast. I started this piece out with one sentence. He's clearly the best player in baseball, and there is a serious conversation for him on track to be the greatest of all time. And that's unarguable. That's undisputable.
Whoa.
Undisputable.
Undisputable that he's on track. He's going to become the greatest of all time.
If he stays exactly where he is right now, nothing more, nothing less, for another 6-7 years, he will be the greatest player in the history of baseball. His numbers are not good. They're not great. They are ridiculous. And they have been for 5 years. Ridiculous. Okay, we're talking about 3 MVPs. We're talking about an OPS of 1.15. That's over 1,000.
Yes.
Right? Good. 700's okay. Right? 1.15. That's ridiculous. That means he's walking, he's hitting doubles, he's hitting triples, he's hitting home runs. He's stealing 30 bases. He's doing everything. His defense is phenomenal. He's doing everything. It's impossible to find a hole. The only hole is that he's in Anaheim right now. That's the hole. That's the only hole in all of this right now. So put the production aside because everybody can sort of see that, on paper, on all your stats site. I just wanted to look at the contract because obviously I assumed coming in he deserved more than he had. He signed an extension really early. It bought out all of his arbitration years. So let's quickly just talk about that. Baseball players, when they get to the league, they've got a 6-year sort of rookie scale, right? 3 years are called pre-arbitration. That's where they make nothing. They make like the league minimum, which this year is $545,000. So you're seeing guys like Aaron Judge and those younger guys down there in that realm. Then after 3 years, you can go to arbitration, where essentially you're paid based on how well you've performed. So there's a little bit of a adjudication with that money, but it's still not great money. So when Mike Trout went to arbitration his first year, the Anaheim bypassed it and said, all right, let's just give you a nice big 6-year contract. We're going to buy out all of your arbitration and buy out 3 years of free agency, which sounds crazy. It sounds like, why would this guy do this? He's on track to be the greatest of all time. He should be holding out and becoming a free agent and signing a huge contract. So in 2015, he signed a 6-year, $144.5 million contract, right? That's $24 million a year. He got a $5 million signing bonus. It all sounds great, but not elite, right? I'm here to tell you it's elite, and it's elite in a big way. So let's dive into this arbitration really quickly. Like I said, it's a 3-year process. Every year you re-up, okay? And you're sort of adjudicated based on your previous year's production, so you can make more and more. Well, year 1 is significantly lower than year 2 is significantly lower than year 3, right? That's just how it works. Let's just take the big players in the game right now. Machado, Nolan Arenado, Bryce Harper, Mike Trout. All 4 of these guys now have come through 3 years of arbitration. The latter guys are on the last year right now. Okay? Adding up the 3 numbers, the 3 salaries from year 1, year 2, year 3, Manny Machado's at $32.5 million. Fine, right? Arenado's at 34, Harper's at 40. Mike Trout, the first 3 years of this extension, made $44.75 million.
Wow.
What does that mean? That means that, yes, he's the highest paid arbitration player, but it also means that 3 years ago, really 4 years ago, this was done in 2014, 4 years ago, his agent and the Anaheim Angels were able to predict this and project this contract out to be fair and valued for 2018, because we're now into year one of free agency for Mike Trout in terms of how his experience broke down. So he's the highest paid 3-year arbitration player based on this contract. So now we're in year 4, right? Now we've got 3 years left on the deal, and it's his first 3 years of free agency. So let's pretend like he was able to hit the open market this past winter and he signed a brand new 3-year deal, right? Well, that 3-year deal is worth $99.75 million, which is $33 million a year, which is the most of any player in baseball right now, and it'll be the most next year based on what we've got going. No other player over the next 3 years, 18, 19, and 20, will be making $99 million. That means the contract that Mike Trout signed 4 years ago was good enough to be the best arbitration contract ever for 3 years, and is now the best veteran contract for 3 years from 2018 to 2020.
That just never happens.
It's a perfect contract.
It doesn't happen in sports.
It says two things. Number one, this is a hell of a contract by his agent, Craig Landis. It's a hell of a contract because it's completely held up 4 years into it. And number two is, this says something about baseball. This says more about baseball than I think this free agency period we just saw said, which was that teams just aren't pushing the envelope anymore. They're not doing it. They're not going out for guys who don't deserve it and saying, all right, well, we're going to pay you $30 million just because that's what the market says. And, the game's got to evolve and you're the next man up. So here's $185 million, Jason Hayward, because you play good right field. I mean,
right.
that happened. Yeah. That happened. Right? I think those days are done. I think they're done and they're toast. And Mike Trout, it's an unbelievable story to read this breakdown, because I was blown away. I read these contracts every day, and I have never seen a situation where in year 4 the contract is as good as it was in year 1, spanning over an arbitration free agency period like this one does. He's being paid right on the dot where he should be.
Are the Angels happy with this? Do you said
well, they got the greatest player of all time, so
he's still there, and that's all that matters to them. I mean, let's be fair, because in 3 years, when this thing expires, there's a really good chance he's somewhere else. And we'll talk about the money when that gets closer. But it's just an unbelievable situation that right now he is paid exactly where he should be. This was structured perfectly year by year. So kudos to Craig Landis, and kudos to the Trout camp, and kudos to the Angels for really
willing to.
For getting this done, for understanding 4 years ago that this player was going to be the elite player in the game in 2018. He clearly is. I mean, the numbers are not even close to anybody else right now. They're not even close production-wise. So you can talk about your Bryce Harpers and your Manny Machados and these guys hitting the market, and they're going to be paid fine, but they're not going to be paid Mike Trout money. There's no way. I mean, the production is so off in terms of what Mike Trout has been able to do in comparison to these guys. And look, we're talking about $33.25 million for Mike Trout. You've heard numbers like $40 million for Bryce Harper. There's no way it's happening.
Yeah, you can't pay more.
I told you that wasn't going to happen a few episodes ago. I'm here telling you, with having done this research, he's not even going to make $33 million. There's no way that Bryce Harper should come into a contract making as much money as Mike Trout right now, based on the evaluations I've been doing on all of these guys together in comparison. I think Bryce Harper batting .209 right now with 20 home runs should be happy to make $30 million coming into his next contract. And I love the fact that Mike Trout didn't sign a 15-year contract, because because in 2014 that was still there. That was the Albert Pujols signings and the Giancarlo Stanton signings. Those things all existed back then, and I think it's a beautiful thing. Maybe the most important thing, that he made this a 6-year contract. Why is this important? He becomes a free agent in 2021 when he will be 29 years old, and that is the buzz number, right? He's not 30. He's 29. So he will be ready. He will be under 30. He'll be hitting the open market. He will have 30 teams ready to chomp on him. And we'll see what happens with the money then. But financially speaking, this is perfect right now. It's going to be perfect for him when he needs to turn this over in 2021. It's an unbelievably structured deal in terms of baseball. It's an unbelievably measured deal in terms of baseball contracts from 2014. But all the numbers are sort of broken down in our piece at SpotChart.com, and really just the impact that it's going to have on Bryce Harper, I think, is evident, because this is a guy who, Mike Trout, who does it all. He fills up the stat boards. His WAR is ridiculous if you believe in that stat in terms of what he's done. You talk about a valuable player, and what he's done for that Angels franchise over the past 5 seasons. So everything's sort of in place for him, and really this is the free agent we should be talking about in 3 years. Let's kind of cool our jets on Harper and Machado here for a bit.
Okay, we brushed past, and I can't believe Paul didn't step up here. I just have a hard time believing the guy we're seeing now is going to be deemed the greatest of all time. Doesn't winning matter?
I haven't brushed past it because now that you brought it up, I was going to say, Who do you consider that to be right now? It's a simple, who does he have to knock out?
Well,
who's the greatest player? But this is such a hard question to answer.
Yeah,
Joe DiMaggio, Hank
Willie
Aaron,
Mays.
It's got to be Willie, right? Is it a modern guy
Mays.
is it A-Rod? Is it Derek Jeter?
No, Willie Mays. Right? I mean, everybody said Babe Ruth, Willie Mays. Like, you look all the way around, all around player. Ruth was so different in his time, right?
He'd be great now.
Yes. Well, yeah.
You wouldn't care how much he struck.
Right.
What would that shift be?
But Willie Mays, to me, has always been Willie Mays, and like Ted Williams is always regarded as the greatest hitter, right? But I don't know about all-around player, but some say Ted Williams.
I'll give it to you. I'll give you Willie Mays.
Yeah.
Same position, right?
Yeah.
Filled up the stats just like Trout's doing.
There's so many great players, right?
Sure.
In major, like Ken Griffey Jr. was
Great.
on track to be.
That was somebody who I thought of. Yep.
Yeah, but for some reason, injuries hampered him, or else he would have been, I think, the greatest player of all time. And he's on track to be that way. And he was incredible. Right? I mean, he was just awesome. And injuries sidetracked him there.
Look, there's no reason not to root for Mike Trout.
I
and
agree.
that's the best part about this,
yes.
right? I mean, you don't have a situation where you've got egos out there, sort of like the basketball situation a little bit. LeBron's sort of on board with this whole MJ conversation. There's just a little bit more flair to that. You don't hear Mike Trout talking about this. Mike Trout is humble. He's great with the media. He's great with fans. He's great with kids. He's just stuck on the West Coast right now, and that's okay.
But not even the premier team in the West Coast.
No, not yet.
And that brings up the one criticism. Again, it's hard to criticize much about Mike Trout. The criticism could be, and I say this only for discussion purposes because I don't always believe that one guy should
not in baseball.
But he hasn't won. They haven't won.
They've been to one
if
playoff
he's that
game.
good, how has not he been able to raise the level of the team around him to win?
My point is he has. My point is he's put them in contention alone. Consistently, he's been that good that he's been able to carry them through a long season. It's just not the kind of sport that one player can do that, which you mentioned there. And we're talking about this now because it's sort of been an easy path for him, right? He's with the team who drafted him. He signed a nice contract. He's sort of he's sort of happy right now. He's content a little bit in this situation. We'll see what happens when free agency comes in, right? That sort of jars people, especially people who might be a little bit more on the humble side, like the quieter side of life a little bit, which he sort of seems to. We'll see what happens when 30 teams come calling and the media is just down his throat about where he's going to go and that whole, the decision, right? The whole decision, if that has to come into play. We'll see how that affects him. It maybe affects his career. We'll see if he can stay healthy. But as of right now, and it's not 1 year. This isn't an Aaron Judge conversation, right? This isn't a flash in the pan. This guy has done this now for 5+ years. The numbers have gotten better. They're consistently outstanding. So it's something to watch. But just in terms of the contract, it's just been a pleasure to break this down because it's been unbelievable how well this has held up.
I love the Aaron Judge comparison. No, it just reminded me of my buddy when we were kids. Remember when Kevin Moss came up?
Yeah.
And he
Yankee
sent
slugger.
away for 50 Kevin Moss rookie cards that he bought as an investment.
I do have an Aaron Judge rookie card, by the way.
Good call.
It could be a good investment there,
Right.
Is it? Wait, what's it
I
graded?
do have a Mike Trout rookie card, too.
Do you have it graded?
I do.
Do you?
I do.
What's the grade on it?
I've got a grade 10 Mike Trout rookie card.
Do you
Very
really?
nice.
I do. That was an investment I made.
What's the
as a
value on it right
baseball
now?
fan. I've seen it out there for about $1,000.
Wow.
Very nice.
So
Nice.
Where do you have it in your house?
I've said too much.
No, I'm That's we should do a whole show on card collecting. By the way,
I'm in.
It is fascinating, Paul. It's a whole. My kids are into it. It is a whole.
I love the
different
fact that
ballgame.
people are still into it in this digital age that we live in.
So the card collecting is the reason that I made Spot Track essentially.
I did not know that.
So
I
I
didn't
was
know that.
I was a 12-year-old kid, right, in Angola, New York, sort of nothing to do all day, so I'd collect cards. I collected a ton of cards, and in fact, I've been going through them recently just to sort of trim out some of the fat. But I databased my cards.
Is that a shot at Cecil Fielder?
It is now.
Wow.
But I would data. There was no software or internet or anything back then that could do this. So I databased my cards by set, by number, by player. I was data inputting at age 12.
Of course he did.
And I would run reports and go to the flea market, and I'd know which cards I need from each set, and I'd go and buy those cards. So I was doing all this stuff. I was doing this data input on players
That's awesome.
back in my early childhood. And so when it came time with this idea came forward, I was sort of just kind of built to do this data input stuff. So that's all it came from.
I knew every card I had as a kid because I know like the 80, 81 top set, which ones I needed to complete teams because that was always. And I remember having this discussion with my barber when I was in high school, and he grew up in Philly, big Phillies fan from the World Series team. It was the 80, 81 team, right? And I said, I have that complete team. He's like, I'll buy it from you. So I sold it to him for $50.
All right.
So this is like, 30 years ago, $50. And I'm thinking, damn, why did I do that?
Yeah.
Now I think like, why did I do that? But back then, $50. But I the database was in my head. I knew every card that I had. And we'd trade. Like you go to your friend's house and trade.
Yeah.
And you'd know if you needed a Mike Trout.
That's right.
You're like, oh, I need that one.
That's right.
Like, what do you need? Oh, here are my duplicates. Right? You trade duplicates of that. That same year, the Yankee team, I needed, who did I need? I might have been Paul Bird. I think I needed. And my best friend had it, would not trade me the card.
That's it.
He just knew I needed it. I had nothing he needed, and he wouldn't trade it to me. And I was like, okay, I guess I respect that on some level.
Let's do it. Let's pick an episode here and talk cards.
Right. I think, because cards is a huge business now, and the value on cards and how their valuation maybe relates to their value of their card.
Yeah, you never know.
Fascinating stuff there. And we'll let you bring out your 1950 Bowmans, Paul.
Hey, now.
I actually have some.
I have a lot of 70s stuff still left, some late 70s cards.
And my father-in-law salvaged like some of his cards when he was a kid, and they're like a Frank Gifford rookie.
Yeah,
it's kind of and Elroy Hirsch.
Yeah,
before
Crazy
legs. Yeah,
I love those stories.
Just kind of need to have those cards. I won't tell him I sold them. Okay, that doesn't. Hey, listen, it's a short work week because of the July 4th holiday. Yeah. So happy holiday to everybody here. So we'll shorten up the podcast a little bit. Thanks for listening. Fascinating stuff on Mike Trout. Look at that contract at SpotTrack.com, and it'll give you a precursor to what the top level is for Bryce Harper and Manny Machado going forward. For Mike Giannetti, founder of SpotTrack.com, Paul Peck, I'm Kevin Sylvester. Have a great holiday, everybody, and we'll talk to you next week here on the SpotTrack.com podcast.